Hello, this here is my third match from Season 4 of the Champions of the Playground Blood Bowl League. You may notice that things are going faster than normal. I'm not entirely sure why it happened, but for whatever reason, when I recorded this, it ended up being recorded at double speed, which is part of the reason I decided to make a video of this one, just because it looks kind of neat, takes less time for me to record. Looks like I'm much more decisive than I actually am, which is nice. There's potential for interest in the match as well, because as I recall, I think it was after this match that Brother Oni was complaining in the Blood Bowl thread that he didn't really know how to deal with elves, and so I thought it might be interesting to try and look at the difficulties and so on. Okay, so kick, there we go. A slight mistake in my setup. You'll note that I have this Galanias Auglinarin, who is a journeyman. Obviously, I was short a player for this match. Actually, that might well still be my thrower who died in my first match. So yeah, really I should have put the journeyman on the line of scrimmage to get beaten up. Okay, so first point here is that what Brother Oni is doing does make a certain amount of sense. He's walking up players to my elves to harass them, except the problem is that in the wide zones, that includes walking straight up to my blitzers, who both rolled doubles for their level ups and therefore both have guard, meaning that the returning blocks are actually in my favour. I mean, this is or at least one of them is. Okay, so it's just Mars who has guard, but that makes a significant difference. And this is the thing, you can walk up to the elves to some extent, but you have to be aware that you are giving them free blocks at that point. And it's just a matter of whether they can make anything of those free blocks that you're giving them. Which, in the case with the guard, I could, and then on the right-hand side here I was able to just bring in another assist. It's more of a problem for me where he's in the middle, where we're looking now, where he walked up the Black Orcs, because they're strength 4, I can't really get the strength advantage there so easily, but I can hit this strength 3 guy with my player who has block. And so this is the thing, it's mixed here, because I'm having to back away from the Black Orcs, and so on that side, it's what he did is good, because it's forcing me to roll dice to make these dodges. But on the other hand, he did give me some nice strength 3 players that I could easily beat up. And thus get myself a nice easy line to run Orpheus into his half of the pitch to threaten the defensive touchdown, particularly since he failed to pick up the ball. And I mean, that obviously he couldn't really plan for. So yeah, this is the thing, you want to walk up to the elves and force them to roll dice to get away from you. But that's the thing, you want to pick carefully your positioning as to which elves you're walking up to where. So you want to pick the ones who won't just turn around and hit you favourably. I mean, sometimes that can still be okay, because if they're blocking you, that means they're not going anywhere, potentially going somewhere that would get them closer to taking the ball, and they're not so likely to do damage to you. When it's you have, well, in this case orcs, you have your strength 4 Blaha orcs who are also armor 9. Well, most of the team is armor 9 for orcs. The Black Orcs are strength 4, and the Blitzers all have block already, but it's still a factor, and the fact that I have a Blitzer with guard is making a significant difference, of course. Because, yeah, in principle, what he's been doing is right, because he wants to start players in base contact with me so that he can get blocks rather than blitzes, or force me to roll a lot of dice to dodge away. But the thing is, in a lot of cases I can just turn around and take the blocks myself, and then either I push the guys away and probably don't follow up, so he's again in the position where he just has the one blitz and maybe 1 or 2 blocks at most. Or I actually knock them over, in which case he still doesn't have those blocks. So, see, for example, of course, he wants to be careful about his positioning around where the ball is, obviously. But if he didn't have to be concerned about the ball, then Morglum Gauja, or however you pronounce that, could have stepped next to Sripik to take up a position next to Garnias Saugbenarin, which would then have made it more difficult for me to hit back. Still, I'm not hugely keen to take that block because Galanias is a journeyman, he has loner, and so if it goes wrong, I can't use a reroll on it. But I certainly can try it. And as indeed I'm going to, and I had to trust Alona not screwing me over there. But here's the thing, this means that I've opened up I've opened up his sort of cage there, so possibly, I mean, this is why I'm always wary about putting part of a cage where it can be immediately blocked, because then if that player is then knocked over, then there's presumably a follow-up blitz onto the ball carrier. Another point, I suppose, is that his team is divided up, right? He has his ball carrier and 4 players around him. Plus you have Raxog there, who is likely to get pushed into the crowd next turn. And then he has these other 4 players over on the left-hand side, and that's kind of a problem. He wants his guys to all be together. They're stronger that way. I mean, you're not necessarily completely together, because if you just completely bunch up your entire team, then it's very easy to slow them down. He wants to have them divided maybe a bit, so that I have to divide my attentions. And okay, this is the only reason that Raxog is not getting pushed out the sidelines here, probably. It's because I can... Oh, no, I'm going to take the Blitz on Subaru, so that I still have the crowd surf available. But, of course, the difference here is that I have the agility and movement to take my players on the left-hand side and quickly move them over to the right to deal with the ball, whereas he doesn't have so much maneuverability in that way. So now making sure to cover everything before I do anything risky, because now I just have this 1 dice, but it works. And yes, checking how far the orcs can actually get before deciding whether or not to take the risk of going for it. So now I believe I'm completely out of reach. It's a minor point, but sidestep. That way, I would not have taken that foul. Fouling with a black orc, you don't even have a bonus. And yes, minor point with the sidestepping to places where they're in the way. And so 3 KO'd orcs. This is obviously going to be in my favour at this point. And I mean, that really is pretty bad luck that I managed to get the KOs, but like I said, yes, like I said, the the positioning has been relevant. He's allowed me the opportunities to have those blocks where he didn't necessarily have to. You know, you want to, as I've been saying, you want to walk up to the elves and harass them, but you don't necessarily want to go overboard with it. Because they can hit you back. And so here we have the same sort of thing again. Since the ball is unclaimed, I'm obviously going to go for it. And so, you see, this is very much the sort of elven approach here. I'm taking the blocks that I can take and dodging away from the ones I can't. Which is the thing. Ideally, as I say, there's not much he can do about the lock of the blocks and so on working out so much in my favour, but ideally he wants to avoid giving me so many of the ones which are in my favour, forcing me into the ones where all I can do is dodge away. And then he will still get frustrated because I'll probably make most of those dodges, and so he won't have many elves to hit. But really, well, you have to be patient with this sort of play. Okay, so key point, he's just had his turn 7 and none of his players are in scoring range. Therefore, I really don't have to worry. I can just move up and harass the ball carrier, hoping to get an extra touchdown myself. Although, as I recall, I think I possibly go a bit overboard with it. Because if I kept some players back, it would be more difficult for him to then take the ball out of my reach, which turns out to be relevant. Now that was fairly... those last two moves were fairly reasonable, just keeping Mokbad and Tokost away from the action. And yeah, in general, I'm just trying to stop players interfering with my attempts to take the ball. But he can remove the obstacle that is Locrian. And, unexpected, but passes to a Black Orc. And now, because I moved all my players into his half, I have no one available to try and take the ball away from that Black Orc. He's too far away from me. I mean, well, I can try, but it's unlikely to work. Whereas, if I'd been content with just having 3 or 4 players near the ball carrier, then I would have still had some back in more defensive positions who could try to beat up this Black Orc. And so yeah, I'm still trying it, but it was not very likely to work. And, okay, his orcs have woken up, so we are back on even footing, but admittedly I'm 1-0 up and I'm now receiving, so we expect this to go in my favour. It is very strange, of course, because of the issue with the recording where it ended up at double speed, there's also no sound, which I'm finding very disconcerting when I stop talking and there's no game sound. And yes, okay, so here, another Slight mistake. Again, I have a blitzer with guard, so those guys in the wide zones, I can hit them. And I will do so. On multiple point, I can hit them favourably. Obviously, I could hit anyone on the line of scrimmage. It's just a matter of whether it would do anything useful for me. And yeah, now this is potentially sketchy for me, because failing that dodge, I hadn't gotten as far as giving thought to making the ball safe. Which means that he can potentially try and take it away from me. And I mean, it's probably nothing that I won't be able to recover from, but this was, I think, a mistake by me, and okay, he only gets a push in any case. But I gave him that opportunity. The downside is, if you look over on the right-hand side at Adagio and Tristan, they have a clear line to just run up the pitch. And Orpheus only needs one dodge to be somewhere useful. No, 2 dodges, but okay, but I do decide to just send it with Tristan, because he can get further counting movement, see how far I want to go, whether going for it are a good idea or not. And the conclusion is, yes, they are. But take them one at a time. That's a key point which I think some people don't necessarily think of, which is, if you want to make going for it to get yourself into a safer position, you take them one at a time, because a 2+ is obviously pretty likely to work. 2+ with a reroll is very likely to work. So you take one and you see if you need the reroll. If you don't, then feel free to take the second one. If you do need to use the reroll, then the second one is a riskier proposition, and so you should consider carefully whether you want to take that risk. But now, yeah, Tristan is well away, and I managed to make the dodges to get Aeolian, Orpheus, and Mercury around to stop players getting any closer. And now, here is the thing. As I recall, a comparable situation to this came up last season when I was playing Brotheroni's Humans with my vampires, and I can't remember if he did exactly what he's done here, of fouling, but the point is, he just took that foul, he didn't move any players towards the ball carrier, which meant that if I hadn't decided to be flashy and so on, if I wanted to just be incredibly secure, I could have run Tristan to one square outside of the end zone and had him stand there, because there's no reason for him not to. Of course, since that touchdown put me 2-0 up, that was another reason why it really didn't matter, because even if Brotheroni gets another touchdown at this point, I'm still in the lead. But in general, I mean, it's still a factor, and if this was a playoff match, then I might well have said, well, okay, I will just stand outside the end zone, let the clock tick down until you actually force me to score by presenting any means by which you could try to stop me doing so. And thus you will have less time to try and even things out. That was potentially risky. If he'd failed that pass or catch, it could have been... Okay, right, forgetfulness. He forgot to have the thrower pick up the ball, and thus had to pass it to him. On the other hand, I suppose it may have been a better idea to take that risk than leave the ball with... How do you even pronounce that name? Ugrish. Though it's not like I have a particularly easy route anywhere that I could take to... Okay, and the Curse of the Elves, double ones, comes up to bite me. May not have been the best idea to go for that one dice blitz straight away, but I suppose my players are in a fairly decent defensive position for the most part. So I think that plus my 2-0 lead was probably why I thought I'd go for the one dice first, and so then if it worked, I would still have all my other players free to take action depending on where the ball ended up. Checking scoring range. Now that I don't agree with, because it's a point which I'm sure I've made other times. It's easier to run in a scoring threat and then keep the ball somewhere safe further back. Whereas if you pass to your scoring threat, then I have one target that I can easily get to, as opposed to having one target that I can't easily get to and one who is not as significant a target, or possibly multiple. You can run in multiple scoring threats and I can't hit all of them. Of course, as it turns out, I knocked the ball loose, just as I was kind of talking about there. One easy target. And then the ball is caught by a Black Orc. On the other hand, Black Orcs don't have that agility, and so I can just lay a minefield of tackle zones around him to make sure that he can't go anywhere. I mean, really, what you want to do if a Black Orc ends up with the ball is have them hand it off to someone who has better agility and would not be better served trying to hit people or mark them with that strength 4. So I put this minefield of tackle zones around partly to ensure that the Black Orc can't easily get away, and partly also to ensure that a more agile player can't easily get into the Black Orc to be handed off to on a subsequent turn. Of course, there is one other way to advance the ball when it's in the hands of a Black Orc, or similarly not very agile player, and that is to just blitz. You can get out of a lot of tackle zones by just following up a blitz, and I possibly should have thought of that, but he's blitzed the wrong way there. If he wanted to advance, then blitzing Orpheus would have been the way to go, and then if he knocked him over, then he could follow up and move. As it is, ball has gone nowhere. That may as well have been a block that he just took. Although, that said, there are a lot of orcs around there. My guarding blitzer is stunned, and so I'm not going to have that easy a time of trying to take the ball back. Which of course is my big concern here. But okay. Knock out the guy who can score, because of that. I mean, that's obviously a simple enough point. If my opponent cannot score, then the ball will still be available for me to try and take it away somewhere on the pitch. Run up a guy who can potentially head for the end zone with that ball if I get it. Checking for other scoring threats and other potential movement. So, yes, evidently I'm concerned about where Raxog might be going. And there we go, and it was 2 red dice. It was never that likely to work, but I wanted to try. This is okay. Sidestep doesn't help me when he's actually knocked over. But of course, Throsh took that block, which means he now can't run off and try to score. And these are the sorts of little considerations that I'm always trying to think about under circumstances like these. Now this is pretty good here. He has managed to open up a line, no tackle zones. Varrock Breakheads can just run through. The problem is that now he's in completely open space. Before, I had a problem because he's strength 4 and he was surrounded by his fellow orcs, so I couldn't get in enough assists to have a favourable blitz. Now, he has no one around him defending him, so I can absolutely get in enough assists. Like so. And so there we go. Ball is free. Well, not free, it's in one tackle zone. One orc tackle zone. But there we go. We managed that. And now pass to Mercury, who can get round and make 2 going for it to hand off, and I failed the second going for it. Otherwise, this would have ended up going to 3-0, because no one would have been able to catch Locrian, and so he would definitely have scored on turn 16. And yeah, this is the sort of stuff that can happen when you play as elves. But now, Brother Only, to his credit, turns it around simply enough for the 2-1. On the other hand, I know now we have only 1 turn left each, and so I've got this guaranteed 2-1 victory, so there's no real point. Essentially, I just want to keep my players out of harm's way, so I'm putting the minimum 3 guys on the line, and I mean, if I have any sort of favourable hitting I can do, I might take it, but yeah, basically I'm just hanging back so I can. And oh, a riot. Now, this is problematic. In theory, I could score from this position, except I didn't leave anyone in position to try and score. Also, if he could take the ball away from me, could potentially score. And so I want to make sure to protect the ball so he can't get it, because I really don't want this game to end up as and I'm still going to try and get in a scoring threat, as it turns out. Might have been better ways of trying to do that. Orpheus probably still could have gotten up into scoring range, blitzing Stripik on the way. But I really wasn't planning for the possibility of making such an attempt. And yeah, so now probably fine, but now I would have followed that up, put a tackle zone on the ball. Yeah, probably fine, but I'm a little concerned about the security of the ball there. So I'm going to mark up that thrower and then just throw the ball deep into the enemy half, from which it's highly unlikely he'll be able to retrieve it and get it far enough up the pitch to make that equalizing touchdown. And indeed, he just fouls on turn 16. Why would you foul on turn 16? You don't get points for it. It doesn't help you in any way. And that was only a lineman. Perhaps just relieving stress. But regardless, that was the game. Relevant to the whole difficult to deal with elves discussion, he was doing the right sort of stuff towards the end. He was harassing me in ways that I couldn't just turn around and hit him. It's just that he didn't manage it so well earlier in the game. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed this. I will be back with another video in some time. Goodbye.